What's up, Rivalers, and welcome to the Ultimate Thing Guide. The Thing is an absolute powerhouse of a disruptor that is fantastic at creating chaos for the enemy team and brings some great utility for his teammates. In this guide, we're going to cover his playstyle, combos, and more. So whether you're a brand new player or a seasoned Thing enjoyer, this guide is for you. Ben-Gun is a tanky vanguard that specializes in knocking up entire enemy teams while being an absolutely unmovable object himself. His kit is quite simple. His primary fire is a basic string of jabs. His right-click Stone Haymaker is a stronger charged-up punch with much greater range and AoE. His shift ability is a dashing charge that knocks up enemies in his path, and at the end of the charge leaves this rocky field that prevents all enemies from using mobility abilities. His E ability is a targeted jump to allies that provides damage reduction to both the Thing and his ally. And his ultimate is Clobberin' Time, which knocks up any enemies in front of him, leaving them vulnerable to tons of follow-up damage. So let's go over each ability and teach you how to efficiently use each one. Starting with his primary and secondary fire, these are going to be your main tools for dealing damage, and you'll want to be using both of them depending on the situation. As a frontline tank, your job is to soak a ton of damage on the frontline while dishing out consistent damage, and for that, your primary fire is really good. Whenever you're in melee range of enemy heroes, you'll want to be dishing out tons of jabs as your bread and butter form of damage output. Your primary fire is great for sustained damage over time, but when you need a bit more burst, your right click shoots a shockwave that can reach up to 10 meters and delivers a much larger chunk of damage all at once. Your right click also penetrates through enemies, so it's great for finishing off low HP targets as a finisher and for getting a large amount of damage on multiple enemies at once. You can even work around the downtime of the charge up for your right click by utilizing cover during the windup and then leaving cover right before the shockwave goes off. You can also get really clever at punishing enemies by timing your right click to go off right when Hulk's shield wears off or right when Psylocke comes out of her ultimate. If you get the timing down on these types of things, you can be sitting there waiting for them with a haymaker right when they become vulnerable. The Thing's passive is that he cannot be moved or displaced at all. He can't be knocked up, he can't be wed pulled by Spidey, he can't be pushed, he can't be pulled, he truly cannot be moved at all. Now that doesn't mean that you can't be CC'd. You can still be stunned or slept, but any ability that tries to actually move the Thing is not going to work on him. This makes him an extremely unique hero that genuinely does just get to go where he pleases and not have to worry about, for instance, getting pushed off a ledge. Next up, his shift ability, which basically turns the Thing into the Juggernaut. This charge makes you immune to all CC, grants you a huge HP shield, and knocks up any enemies in your path. At the end of the ability, Ben creates this rocky field which deals continued damage for a few seconds and disables all mobility moves from enemy heroes. This charge lasts 6 seconds, but you can also prematurely end it yourself if you charge to where you want to be in the fight, and man, this ability is incredible and it has so many uses. You can use it as a hard engage to bulldoze into the enemies and knock up as many as you can. You can utilize the speed of the charge and the shield that it gives you to use it as an escape tool if you found yourself in a bad situation. You can use it to knock up and lock down mobile assassins like Spider-Man and Black Panther. This ability really does make Ben one of the best lockdown characters in the game. As long as you're using your charge intelligently, you will always have instant access to a knockup and guaranteed follow-up damage. And remember, this move makes you immune to all CC for 6 entire seconds. So if you think an enemy Groot or Jeff are about to ult, you can literally begin your charge and run through it without ever being CC'd. There's also a Thing-specific setting I recommend you turn on, and that's hold to dash. This setting makes using your charge ability feel a lot smoother since you can just release the button right when you want to end your charge, and it lets you tap the charge button to just get an instant knockup, which is super useful for combos that we'll be discussing later. Now moving on to his E ability, this is going to be a targeted leap that grants you and whichever ally you leap to 30% damage reduction. This ability is Ben's primary form of sustain and survivability, so be sure not to get too caught up in whatever fight you're taking. Remember to occasionally leap to an ally because granting yourself that damage reduction is going to make your 700 HP health bar last a lot longer. This damage reduction can also totally make the difference between your squishy allies getting dove in one shot, so just always keep your head on a swivel and be ready to jump back to your allies when needed. As an extension of that, you always need to be aware of where your allies are when playing the Thing. It can be really easy to get caught up in a fist fight and get dangerously low HP, and then you turn around and realize you have no allies in range to jump to. Unlike a tank like the Hulk, you cannot use this leap freely. It has to be used to jump to an ally, so always keep a mental note of where your allies are and what your exit plan is. The Thing also works much better in comps with 2 tanks because his massive hitbox means he can just very easily get focused down by the entire enemy team at once. It's It's just not hard to land shots on this guy, and when playing Ben with another allied tank, you can constantly just jump to your other tank, making both of your frontliners absolutely terrifying with that reduced damage. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about the Thing's ultimate. Clobberin' time! With his ultimate, Ben smashes the ground in front of him, dealing a large amount of damage and sending out a shockwave up to 15 meters in front of him, leaving the enemies knocked up and then stunned for a long time. This is an incredible AoE ultimate that is a perfect way to start off a team fight, and as long as enemies aren't getting massive heals or shields, you're going to be getting some guaranteed KOs. This ultimate is the perfect hard engage tool to set up follow-up DPS ults like Moon Knight or Bucky's to combo with. And speaking of combos, a good combo you can do is you can use your charge ability to dive into the enemies and put yourself into a position where you can hit as many enemies as possible with that ultimate. So you'll be knocking them up, then knocking them up again with your ult, then they're also stunned, giving you plenty of time to turn them into a human punching bag. Now that we've given you an overview on how to use each of Ben's abilities, let's talk about some of his strengths as a character. Now, Ben is a very flexible guy, just not the Reed Richards sort of flexible. His gameplay loop is going to consist of mixing diving into the enemy team and jumping back to your team when necessary. You want to charge into the enemy and create a ton of chaos, get your punches in, and constantly be disrupting what they're trying to do. But Ben can also be really good at protecting his backline with his damage reduction and is extremely reliable and fast knockup. Ben is both great playing alongside allied divers and playing in a more peel-oriented playstyle, and there's really no other tank that can quickly alternate between offensive dives and defensive peels as quickly as Ben. Compared to other vanguards, Ben can dive and peel consistently compared to someone like the Hulk, which requires you to land your exile, which is just much more inconsistent compared to something like Ben's knockup, which makes him a great hero to slot into a number of comps. And he honestly just brings so much more utility than other dive characters like Venom, who can't really provide much value if their own team is getting dove. All in all, Ben really gives you the best of both worlds when it comes to diving and peeling. He's also a direct counter to Wolverine, who is the scariest anti-tank DPS in the game, because Wolverine's dive or kidnap ability just straight up doesn't work on Ben. And Ben's anti-mobility rock field is really good against mobile assassins like Spider-Man and Black Panther, but it's also really good at locking down enemy tanks like Doctor Strange and Venom, who rely on their mobility to get out of bad situations as well. Having anti-displacement on his passive, CC immunity on his charge, and removing mobility from enemy teams makes Ben a very unique tank that will hard counter a lot of different heroes. And another cool thing about the Thing is that this hero actually has some fighting game DNA in him. There are some really cool combos you can use to help you squeeze out extra damage and even get some 100-0 KOs. So starting off with his bread and butter combo, it's just a haymaker into jab, or you can start with the jab and chain it into the haymaker, just depending on how far your targets are from you. This is the combo that you're going to be using 90% of the time. But a more advanced combo is you're going to animation cancel your jab into an instant charge into a right click. And for a really cool ult combo, you want to actually use your leap ability to jump onto your teammates in the front line, then press alt immediately into haymaker, then left click charge into another left click, which will one-shot even a 350 HP character like Wolverine, all while they're stunned. But that doesn't mean that Ben doesn't have his own weaknesses. He is one massive guy, which makes him a really easy target, and it means that he can be melted if he overextends or uses his charge or jumps when he shouldn't be. Ben also really struggles against flyers because unlike the Hulk, who can just jump up and snag them out of the air, Ben has basically no options to defend himself against flyers, let alone take them out. Ben also struggles on certain maps and against heroes that utilize high ground because, again, he just can't jump up there by himself. He requires a teammate to already be on that high ground to use his target to jump to. And you typically want your tanks to be the first responders and to claim that space, but when you're playing the Thing, if the fight's not on an even ground surface, you're going to struggle in a lot of scenarios. All in all, the Thing is an amazing addition to the game. He is very straightforward with a lot of room for mastery. Be sure to keep an eye on where your teammates are, balance diving with peeling your own squishies, and utilize your charge intelligently to disrupt the enemy and lock down mobile heroes. If you followed these tips, you'll be carrying games in no time. Let me know down in the comments which hero you want to see a guide on next, and I'll see you in the next one, Rivalers.